There are beach towns in America where you can still buy an actual house for $50,000. Not a shed, not a teardown, an actual livable house near the ocean. Most people think affordable beach living disappeared sometime around 1987, but here's what nobody tells you. Scattered across America's coastlines are forgotten towns so economically abandoned, so far from trendy, and so unpopular with influencers that real estate prices remain stuck in decades past. These are places where the American dream of coastal living still exists if you're willing to accept that your beach town comes with baggage. We're counting down 15 forgotten beach towns where $50,000 gets you property. Some are genuinely beautiful, but economically devastated. Others have environmental issues that keep prices low, and a few are just so isolated that nobody remembers they exist until hurricane season reminds everyone why cheap coastal property stayed cheap. One town has more vacant lots than residents. Another sits in a location so prone to flooding that insurance costs more than your mortgage. Think coastal property is expensive everywhere? Cool. Let's see if you're ready for places where ocean views come with economic depression, where your neighbors are retirees who bought in the 70s, and where your biggest concern becomes whether your house will still exist in 20 years or if climate change has other plans. Subscribe right now because one day you'll want to escape to somewhere affordable. And this list is basically your budget beach town relocation guide with actual research instead of real estate fantasy. Let's break it down. Number 15, Port Arthur, Texas. Port Arthur will sell you a house within miles of the Gulf Coast for prices so low you'll check if the listing is missing a zero. Welcome to the Texas coast where oil refineries meet economic decline. Port Arthur sits on the far eastern edge of Texas near the Louisiana border with about 54,000 people. This town was once a booming petrochemical hub where oil money built grand homes. Then industry consolidation happened. Plants automated. Jobs disappeared. You can find houses under $50,000. Actual houses with foundations, roofs, and rooms. Median home prices hover around $70,000 for move-in ready properties. The catch is Port Arthur smells like refineries because refineries surround the town. Your ocean access is limited because this is industrial coastline, not tourist beaches. Air quality is questionable on certain days, and hurricane risk is real and constant. Port Arthur was devastated by Hurricane Harvey in 2017. Flooding destroyed thousands of homes. Recovery has been slow and incomplete. Crime rates are higher than state averages. Schools struggle with funding. But for $50,000, you own coastal property in Texas. One person who bought there described it as the cheapest coastal living in Texas and exactly what you'd expect for that price. Their house cost $42,000. They can drive to the coast in 10 minutes. But their neighborhood has multiple vacant houses. The refineries are visible from their backyard. And when the wind shifts, the smell makes them close all windows and question their decisions. Port Arthur sits in one of the most hurricane-prone zones in America. Harvey dropped over 40 inches of rain in some areas. Picture yourself in a house you bought for $45,000. You're 15 minutes from the coast. Your mortgage is tiny. Number 14, Algiers, Louisiana. Algiers sits directly across the Mississippi River from New Orleans, technically part of the city, but forgotten enough to have prices that seem impossible for anywhere near New Orleans. Algiers has about 45,000 residents in a collection of neighborhoods that range from historic to deeply struggling. Houses under $50,000 exist. usually requiring renovation. Livable homes run 60 to 80,000 in many neighborhoods. You're a ferry ride from downtown New Orleans. You have proximity to culture, food, and everything that makes New Orleans interesting. The catch is Algiers has high crime rates in certain neighborhoods. Flooding is a constant concern because you're below sea level. Infrastructure is aging and unreliable. Streets flood with heavy rain. Your property might be cheap, but your insurance costs will offset savings. Your house might be $50,000, but if it needs $30,000 in repairs to be livable, your budget math changes fast. One person who bought in Algiers said they got a shotgun house for $55,000 that needed another $20,000 in work. Once finished, they had a renovated home in Greater New Orleans for $75,000 total, which is impossible anywhere else in the city. But they deal with flooding every heavy rain. They were burgled once, and their block has 3 abandoned houses that nobody is fixing. New Orleans is sinking. Algiers is sinking. The land is literally dropping because of groundwater extraction and sediment compaction. Your house might be fine today. In 20 years, flooding might be constant. Picture yourself in a renovated shotgun house that cost $70,000 all in. You're taking the ferry to New Orleans for dinner. Number 13, Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. Bay St. Louis is a small coastal town that was absolutely destroyed by Hurricane Katrina and still hasn't fully recovered economically, which means housing remains shockingly affordable. Bay St. Louis has about 10,000 residents on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Before Katrina, this was a quiet artist community with historic homes and a charming downtown. The hurricane obliterated the town. The storm surge was 25 feet in some areas. Entire neighborhoods were erased. Recovery has been slow. Some areas rebuilt. Others remain vacant lots where houses used to stand. Houses under 50,000 exist, often needing significant work or sitting on lots prone to flooding. Median home prices are around $130,000, but deals below 50 are findable if you're patient. You're right on the Gulf of Mexico. Beaches are accessible. The water is warm. The catch's hurricane risk is extreme. If Katrina didn't teach that lesson permanently, nothing will. Insurance is expensive and difficult to obtain. Some areas are uninsurable through traditional markets. Flood insurance is mandatory and costly. The job market is limited to tourism, service work, and casino jobs on the coast. One person who relocated said they bought a damaged house for $38,000, put in another $30,000, and now own a renovated cottage 5 blocks from the Gulf for under $70,000 total. The town is quiet and beautiful. The community is welcoming. But every June starts hurricane season and they spend 5 months in varying states of alert. They've evacuated twice in 4 years. Recovery has been uneven. Drive through Bay St. Louis and you'll see rebuilt homes next to empty lots where foundations are still visible. Some blocks look fully recovered. Others look like the hurricane happened last year instead of nearly 2 decades ago. Picture yourself on your porch 5 blocks from the Gulf. You bought and renovated for $65,000 total. You can hear waves at night. The sunsets are incredible. Number 12, Oak Island, North Carolina. Oak Island offers coastal living cheaper than almost anywhere on the North Carolina coast, mostly because it's far enough from trendy areas that development passed it by. Oak Island sits on the southern coast of North Carolina with about 8,000 year-round residents. This is a barrier island with beaches, fishing, and not much else. Houses under $50,000 are nearly impossible, but condos and mobile homes in that range exist. Small older homes start around 100,000. You're directly on the Atlantic. Beach access is easy. The island has a slower pace that people either love or find boring within weeks. The catch is Oak Island is prone to hurricanes and flooding. The island has been hit repeatedly. Erosion is a constant issue. Some beaches lose sand every year. Your property might be affordable today, but rising sea levels and increased storm intensity mean long-term value is questionable. The job market barely exists on the island. Most people commute to Wilmington 45 minutes away or work remotely. Schools are limited. Healthcare requires leaving the island. Entertainment is basically the beach and fishing. One person who moved to Oak Island said they found a small house for $90,000, just above the $50,000 budget, but close enough after negotiation. They love the quiet and the beach access, but their social life disappeared. Their job is remote, which makes it work. And they evacuate every time a hurricane even looks at the Atlantic. The island empties fast when storms approach, and they've learned to keep evacuation bags packed from June to November. Barrier islands are temporary. That's not pessimism, that's geology. Barrier islands shift, erode, and migrate over time. Development tries to hold them in place, but nature doesn't care about property lines. Picture a small condo you bought for $55,000. You're walking to the beach in 5 minutes. The pace is relaxed. Number 11, Eastport, Maine. Eastport is as far northeast as you can get in the United States and still be in the United States, which explains why almost nobody lives there and housing costs almost nothing. Eastport has about 1,000 residents on the coast of Maine, right at the Canadian border. This was once a thriving fishing and cannery town. The industry collapsed. People left. What remains is a picturesque coastal town with beautiful historic buildings and almost no economic reason to exist. Houses under 50,000 exist, actual houses that need work but are structurally sound. Median home prices are around $75,000. You're on the ocean. The scenery is classically Maine, rocky coast, fishing boats, lobster. The catch is Eastport is remote beyond belief. You're 2.5 hours from Bangor, which itself is not exactly a major city. Winters are brutal, long, dark, and cold. The ocean is too cold for swimming most of the year. The job market is nearly non-existent. Most people who live there are retired, working remotely, or cobbling together seasonal work. Healthcare requires driving over an hour. Shopping means planning trips. Internet is slow and unreliable in many areas. You're buying into extreme isolation. One person who relocated said they bought a house for $47,000 that needed mostly cosmetic work. They loved the beauty and the quiet. But winter nearly broke them the first year. The sun set at 4 in the afternoon. The cold was relentless. They were snowed in for days at a time. Their social circle was about 12 people. Tides in Eastport are extreme. The area has some of the highest tidal ranges in the United States, over 20 feet in some places. The ocean rises and falls dramatically twice a day. Picture a house you bought for $45,000 with ocean views. The Maine coast is stunningly beautiful. You have solitude most people never experience. Number 10, Port Angeles, Washington. Port Angeles offers coastal living on the Olympic Peninsula at prices far below what most of Washington state demands, mostly because it's economically isolated and job opportunities are scarce. Port Angeles has about 20,000 residents on the northern coast of the Olympic Peninsula, directly across from Vancouver Island. This town has stunning natural surroundings. Mountains rise to the south. Olympic National Park is nearby, but economic decline has been steady for decades. Houses under 50,000 are rare, but mobile homes and condos in that range exist. Small houses start around 80,000. You're on the water, though the strait is cold and not exactly beach weather most of the year. The natural beauty is incredible. The catch is jobs are limited. The largest employers are government and healthcare. The town feels economically depressed. Vacant storefronts are common downtown. The population is aging as young people leave. Weather is mild but gray. Overcast skies dominate for much of the year. Seasonal affective disorder is a real concern. One person who moved to Port Angeles said they found a small house for $75,000, above 50 but negotiable territory. The location is beautiful. They hike constantly, but the gray skies wore them down. Finding work was difficult. The town felt economically stagnant. Ferries connect Port Angeles to Victoria, British Columbia. You can be in Canada in 90 minutes. But it also highlights how isolated Port Angeles is from the rest of the United States. Your closest major city is in another country. Picture a small house just under budget with mountain views. You're hiking in Olympic National Park on weekends. Number 9, Port Bolivar, Texas. Port Bolivar is a small peninsula community near Galveston with beach access and prices that stayed low because hurricanes keep reminding people why building here is risky. Port Bolivar has a few thousand residents on a narrow strip of land across from Galveston Island. You reach it by ferry from Galveston, which is charming until you realize the ferry is your only access and it stops running in bad weather. Houses under 50,000 exist, usually older structures or properties needing significant work. Small beach cottages start around 70,000. You're directly on the Gulf of Mexico. Beach access is immediate. The water is warm. The catch's hurricane risk is extreme and proven repeatedly. Ike was catastrophic here in 2008. Storm surge wiped away entire blocks. Some areas still haven't rebuilt. Insurance is expensive and difficult to find. Flood insurance is mandatory and costly. Your house might cost $50,000, but insuring it could cost thousands annually. The job market is minimal on the peninsula. Most people work in Galveston or Texas City and commute by ferry. Schools require ferrying children off the peninsula daily. Your entire life depends on ferry access that weather can disrupt. One person who bought in Port Bolivar said they got a small cottage for $60,000, just above budget but manageable. They love being on the beach. The lifestyle is relaxed, but they evacuate multiple times per year when storms threaten. Their insurance is absurdly expensive, and they've accepted that their house might not survive the next major hurricane. Ferry dependency is real. When weather is bad, the ferry stops. You're stuck on the peninsula or stuck off it. Medical emergencies become complicated. Picture a beach cottage you bought for $58,000. You're watching sunsets over the Gulf every evening. Life is exactly the beach lifestyle you wanted. Number 8, California City, California. California City is technically not on the coast, but it's close enough to include, and it's one of the strangest failed developments in America where you can buy property for almost nothing. California City is a planned community in the Mojave Desert that was supposed to rival Los Angeles. A developer in the 1950s bought land, laid out streets, and marketed lots. Almost nobody came. What exists now is a small town of about 14,000, surrounded by hundreds of miles of paved streets going nowhere. Houses under 50,000 exist, usually small and outdated. You're 2 hours from the coast, but close enough for weekend beach trips. The catch is California City is a monument to failed development. The infrastructure exists for a city of hundreds of thousands. The population is 14,000. The town feels post-apocalyptic. Miles of empty streets create an eerie landscape. Jobs are limited. Most people commute to nearby military bases or work remotely. Schools are under-enrolled and underfunded. You're in the desert with extreme heat in summer and cold in winter. One person who bought there said they got a house for $42,000 that needed cosmetic work. They wanted cheap property and space. They got both. But living there feels like living in a failed experiment. Their street has 3 occupied houses and dozens of empty lots. Driving through town is surreal because infrastructure exists without people. The street grid is massive. It's one of the largest cities by land area in California, despite having a tiny population. Paved roads stretch in perfect grids with nothing on them. Street signs mark intersections of roads nobody uses. Picture a house you bought for $45,000 with space and silence. You're mortgage-free. You have a yard. Number 7, Brownsville, Texas. Brownsville is at the southern tip of Texas on the Gulf Coast with proximity to the ocean in Mexico. Brownsville has about 180,000 residents right on the border. The town is culturally rich, heavily bilingual, and economically struggling. Houses under 50,000 exist, usually needing work. Median home prices are around $120,000. You're close to South Padre Island, a major beach destination, about 30 minutes away. The catch is Brownsville's economy is weak. Poverty rates are high. Job opportunities are limited outside healthcare, education, and border-related work. Crime rates are higher than state averages in certain neighborhoods. The border creates unique dynamics. Immigration issues are constant in local politics and daily life. One person who relocated said they bought a house for $48,000 that needed minor repairs. The cost of living is incredibly low. They're 30 minutes from the beach. The Mexican food is the best they've ever had. But their neighborhood has crime issues. They don't feel safe walking at night. Job opportunities were limited until they found remote work. Border life is specific. Brownsville's identity is inseparable from its position at the border. Immigration enforcement is visible. Border issues dominate local news. Picture a house you bought for $47,000 in a neighborhood where Spanish is spoken more than English. You're near the beach. Food is incredible and cheap. Number 6, Moss Point, Mississippi. Moss Point is a Gulf Coast town where economic decline forgot to tell anyone still qualifies as coastal living, and houses cost almost nothing. Moss Point has about 13,000 residents near Pascagoula. This was a shipbuilding and industrial town. Industry declined. Jobs left. Houses under 50,000 exist throughout the town. You're close to the Gulf. Beaches are 20 minutes away. The catch is Moss Point has high poverty and crime rates. Economic opportunity is minimal. Schools are among the lowest performing in the state. Hurricane risk is constant. Katrina damaged the area significantly. Your cheap house comes with awareness that storms will return. Insurance is expensive. One person who bought in Moss Point said they got a house for $39,000 that was livable immediately. They're close enough to the coast for regular beach visits. But their neighborhood has crime. They've had a car broken into. The town has limited services. Industrialization left marks. Shipyards and chemical plants shape the environment. Air and water quality concerns exist. Superfund sites are nearby. Picture a house you bought for $38,000 with 3 bedrooms. Your mortgage is non-existent. You're 20 minutes from the beach. Number 5, Ashtabula, Ohio. Ashtabula sits on Lake Erie, which technically makes it coastal, and housing costs so little you'll wonder if the Great Lakes count as beach living. Ashtabula has about 18,000 residents on the shore of Lake Erie. This was once a thriving shipping and manufacturing town. Industry left, population declined. Houses under 50,000 exist all over town. You're on Lake Erie, beach access exists. Summers are pleasant. The catch is, winters are brutal. Lake effect snow is relentless. Your heating costs will be significant. The economy is weak. Job opportunities are limited. Most young people leave. Crime rates are higher than you'd expect. Downtown has many vacant buildings. One person who relocated said they bought a house for $41,000 that was in decent shape. They love having a house on the lake. Summer is beautiful, but winter is punishing. They've been snowed in multiple times. Heating bills are high. Lake Erie faced severe pollution in the 20th century. Water quality has improved, but algal blooms happen regularly. Picture a house you bought for $39,000 with lake views. Summer evenings watching sunset over water are genuinely beautiful. Number 4, Gary, Indiana. Gary sits on Lake Michigan, and the city is so economically devastated that housing prices approach fantasy levels of cheap. Gary has about 70,000 residents, down from over 170,000 in 1960. This was a steel town. When steel declined, Gary collapsed. Houses under 50,000 exist everywhere. You can find properties for under $10,000. You're on Lake Michigan. The lake is genuinely beautiful. The catch is, Gary is economically devastated in ways that are hard to overstate. Crime rates are among the highest in America. Entire neighborhoods are abandoned. Schools are failing. Buildings are collapsing. Your cheap house comes with living in a place where your neighbors are likely gone, services are unreliable, and crime is a constant concern. One person who bought in Gary said they got a house for $18,000 near the lake. The location has potential, but their street has more abandoned houses than occupied ones. They've had multiple break-ins. The city doesn't maintain their street. Gary's abandoned buildings are everywhere. Schools built for thousands sit empty. Houses line streets where nobody lives. Picture yourself in a house you bought for $15,000 with Lake Michigan views. You're watching the sunrise over the lake. Number 3, Benton Harbor, Michigan. Benton Harbor sits on Lake Michigan with beach access and prices so low you'll assume something is catastrophically wrong. You'd be correct. Benton Harbor has about 9,000 residents. This was once a thriving fruit shipping and manufacturing center. Industry left. Houses under 50,000 exist throughout the city. Properties in the $10,000 to $30,000 range are common. You are directly on Lake Michigan. Beach access is immediate. The catch is Benton Harbor has extreme poverty rates. Over half the population lives below the poverty line. Crime is high. Schools are among the worst performing in Michigan. The city has faced water contamination issues with lead levels exceeding safe limits. Infrastructure is failing. One person who bought in Benton Harbor said they got a house for $25,000 2 blocks from the lake. The proximity to water is incredible, but their neighborhood is economically devastated. They don't feel safe. The water crisis scared them. Picture a house you bought for $28,000 with lake views. Number 2, Prichard, Alabama. Prichard is near Mobile Bay, and the town is so economically collapsed that housing costs almost nothing. Prichard has about 20,000 residents. economic decline and industrial loss left Pritchard as one of Alabama's poorest cities. Houses under 50,000 are standard. Properties under 20,000 exist regularly. You're near water even if you're not directly on the beach. The catch is Pritchard has extreme poverty. Crime rates are very high. The city failed to pay pension obligations to retired workers. Schools are failing. Infrastructure is deteriorating. Services are minimal. One person who relocated said they bought a house for $16,000 near the Bay Area. The cost was absurdly low, but their neighborhood has constant crime. They've been robbed. The city can't maintain streets. The pension crisis was catastrophic. Pritchard became the first city in Alabama to stop paying pension obligations to retirees. Former city workers got nothing. Picture a house you bought for $14,000 close to the bay. Number 1, Cairo, Illinois. Cairo sits at the confluence of the Mississippi and Ohio rivers, and the town is so economically abandoned that you can buy entire blocks for the price of a used car. Cairo has about 2,000 residents. This was once a strategic transportation hub. Then the economy changed and Cairo became irrelevant. Houses are practically free. Properties under $10,000 are common. You're at the meeting point of two major rivers. The catch is Cairo is a ghost town. Infrastructure is failing. Most of the town is empty. Services barely exist. The population has collapsed by over 90% from its peak. Jobs don't exist. Schools closed. One person who visited Cairo described it as one of the saddest places in America. Houses that were once grand mansions sit empty and rotting. Entire streets have no occupied buildings. Cairo's decline is total. The population peaked around 15,000 in 1920. It's now under 2,000. Beautiful historic buildings stand empty. Streets are overgrown. Picture a Victorian house you could buy for $8,000 at the confluence of two massive rivers. That's the list. 15 towns where coastal property costs almost nothing because these places come with trade-offs that most people can't accept. Some face hurricane risk. Others deal with economic collapse. A few are so isolated that modern amenities feel like distant memories. These are America's forgotten beach towns, where the dream of coastal living still exists if you're willing to accept that dreams come in different forms, and some of those forms involve refineries, floods, crime, and the understanding that you're buying property in places other people are leaving. If you made it this far, hit subscribe, because one day you might need this list.